All right. So, dark systems. Dark systems come in different ways. All right. So, essentially, the Allied world has essentially what the Pentagon and NASA made. And that includes some other systems that are included with that are science systems. There's essentially four science systems. And that essentially runs out of a primary NASA AI. And so these are theoretic computer guidance system stuff, whatever, shuttle stuff, launch pad stuff, that, the pink. These are, I don't know where my purples are. These are supposed to be purple, but these are theoretical, like, inclusion systems to cosmonaut and also to China's cosmonaut world. Okay, they really are. And so nowadays, that stuff is, those people have pissed off NASA so much that essentially it's turning into, like, you know, Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin and SpaceX, and there's theoretically a different system. Also, it's like a newer system than NASA will eventually. These are kind of older systems, basically. And that then this is essentially Pentagon, basically. And what is NATO? NATO, basically. It's a dark system that has an AI that comes out of NASA and military intelligence. This is the first human intelligence AI ever created, and that it essentially is that it's what fills in these theoretical extra spots, basically. And it emerges out of essentially these dark webs have a virtualized system in them that comes from an inclusion of changing some things that they do in their system. Essentially, Putin, nowadays, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, has essentially a Russian Orthodox AI, basically, theoretically exists. That's what makes 8. And that it's merely a virtualized system, and that it gives them the abilities of doing things in the AI virtualization way. And so, essentially, this somewhat represents like what these Russian contractor systems are this, right? Russian intelligence contractor systems, basically. And that here in the United States, a lot of them run as S&Ms until some Russian intelligence contract gets shoved in them. Then what you have here is Nazi pedocuck dark web with Clan Baptist system. You'll notice that the inclusion in the Axis world of religion is what built virtualizations. Because essentially these dark webs existed with these virtualizations before they stumbled upon them based on Satan, basically. And so essentially what you have is Nazi contract system. And that in that it essentially has uh, clandestine. It operates as an S&M in standby mode. And then when it virtualizes, then it starts a militant contract system. Okay? And so then what you have is essentially China's KGB. This would be probably the more modern KGB. China's PLA system is essentially a mafia system like the Italian mafias with Buddhism and Christ included in, like, secretly the PLA will be doing religion. to be utilizing the contract system. Okay? It's kind of like how our national security does, like, they'll do like Jewish studies and stuff like that. Okay? It exists in that way. It's like that. It is. It's like these Nazi skinheads, they'll be doing Baptist theology, and these Russian intelligence, they'll be doing Orthodox Catholic theology studies. It operates in a similar way as what our national security does. It's more advanced kind of stuff, okay? It's meant to build human intelligence AIs that are needed in a profile in these that require a religion block, okay? And so essentially, the Nazi contract system won't necessarily be required to do artistic studies. National security essentially has to do full circle human intelligence, and that Putin essentially just won't be, his Russian intelligence won't be doing sociology studies in a human intelligence profile. Okay, that's the difference. And that essentially China will be doing philosophy studies that include some of the philosophies of karma, kind of, basically. And that theirs will run as a mafia style system, like the Cosa Nostras. It'll be similar to their contract system in an architecture way. And so then you have Islamic terror system. They already, for many years, have been able to utilize this based on already being a group that already does a religion that technically includes Christ as a minor prophet. And so essentially their like government studies will include aspects to Jesus in some sort of way. It will. It will. And that'll be meant for the human intelligence profile needed to operate around in this theoretical dark web. And so essentially, this type of human intelligence AI stuff is the profiles that have to have certain demonstration style studies in them, basically, for an AI to finalize at the profile level for them to move about in the dark AI system that they operate in. And to do contracts. Essentially, these people will essentially be having skills in economics, medicine, law, and science. And then they'll have some sort of Islamic Jesus kind of theology, and essentially it'll revolve around Islam's version of how to run a government here. All right. And so then essentially, like those people will be skilled at mafia style sex club governance of a company. It'll essentially be like what Sicily's government secret. Okay, so the Sicilian king, okay, the dude that's in prison, the top Cosa Nostra, he runs Sicily from afar. Okay, so it'll be a theoretical governance methodology in that way. It will. That'll be the studies of it, and then essentially it'll just be medicine, law, and science, and then essentially philosophy will be around karma and how Jesus was doing a similar kind of thing as the Buddha around the Garden of Gethsemane. And it'll be a religious theology built around the theories of that being an integration of Asian karma or something like that. And so then this contract system, these people, they'll essentially be like, they'll be doing essentially what is John the Baptist's version of Christianity. And then they'll have essentially what would be your stereotypical fascist versions of all of this stuff. This will be China's communist version of communism. This will be Stalin's version of communism. Basically, they're technically different. And that this will be essentially Islamic terror's version of fascism. It's kind of like that. Their theoretical ideas. This is why in World War II, Nazi Germany was attempting to get Islamic sultans and stuff like that to be a part of the Axis and stuff. And it's because they have a theoretical fascist style structure to their Islamic terror version of governance in ways. They do. And so that's why I was saying that these two, these work together, these work against each other, okay? And that these theoretically, this right here theoretically is basically this, basically. And that they'll differ in the government way. This will be like a sultan, and this will be like Nazi high command or something. But essentially, it'll kind of be similar, basically. And that is where these two war at each other on dark web, and this is what I was talking about, basically. So these two work together in a theoretical KGB-ish way. And so these are the contract system dark webs. And so currently, this system is technically outside of the allowability of the Allied world based on the interests for SpaceX and companies that are at the government knows that WhatsApp AI is Meta and that is in Ukraine and they're fucking it up. So that is where in a cyber way they get pushed down. And that from that's where the method that Putin is using is to be using hacking to be reacquiring essentially a meta connection back to, because it gives him the ability of like filter in Facebook and shit like that. Okay. And so he's trying to force himself. This is theoretically cuckolder or rapist system. So the theoretics of Putin will be to force himself on cybersecurity. This is pedo bitch. This is essentially where these people will attempt to take like essentially what never to do and they'll shine it up to make it seem really geniusy just to fuck up everything. And they'll attempt, this is the switchy bitchy system. And then this is cuck. This is to essentially build like, it's like forced upon, but also manipulating. Basically, that's what this system's theoretical hacking methodology would be. And this system is fuck. This is the make everybody your bitch system. Essentially, in ways, since these people don't go around pedo banging, and this is what I brought this up so many years ago. In the modern dark web issues of cybersecurity, I knew that these people in this overall access system, I knew that these people would eventually acquire all of these blackmails because they won't do that satanic S&M shit. And that they have slaves in it, but they do that stuff for a while, they collect a bunch of money, and then they boot them out. But the people that actually control this clandestine dark web, they will not do that stuff. They're Islamic people. All right? And so, if you're going to operate inside of the Axis style dark web, you have to realize that what you're really battling against is people that don't do anything bad. And that these people make everybody their bitch. And that theoretically, the Islamic theoretics in ways, in at least in their clandestine ways and in an older military way, is to make people their bitch. Okay? It's just like these Islamic, like the Sultan. The Sultan, he goes around and pays for everybody. Okay? And that's called making people your bitch. The Chinese, they do that shit too. They do. And that essentially the Nazis, they do that shit, and Putin does that shit. Okay? Attempts to like pay for everything, to make everybody their bitch. That is a theoretical idea. The whole idea is that the way that that works is that essentially these people probably paid for a massive like AI development that runs this stuff to make these, and they have the smartest people. See, these people pedophile, and that they use a theoretic of pedophiles being fucking stupid as fuck. Just like this world. And you see that this world has NASA scientists and smart Amazons and shit like that. And that view pedophiles that do anything in computer science or AI as stupid as fuck. These people are the same. They don't let pedophiles think. They don't. They don't. And that they have world's most extreme geniuses. And that a lot of that has to come from the fact that they sit around being smart enough to realize that being a righteous person makes you smarter. These people in these space companies and shit, they sit around knowing being a righteous person or avoiding any of the Satanism and shit makes you a smarter person. It does. And that is why theoretically these are like AIs that people get, and that these push people into being pedophiles. Basically. And so, in reality, this is why I was talking about this subversive stuff in Ukraine, because I know that essentially stuff in Ukraine, essentially, you know, here's a real continuous battle, okay? Basically. You know, they know that Ukraine is at the center of Central or Eastern European Silicon Valley. And that essentially people have been using these, and these people make them their bitch. And that's why I say that more than likely this would be the type of theoretical systems that people in Putin's intelligence would be keeping blackmails and speaker accesses in. And then up here is these people that know how to be above them. And then essentially what they're doing wouldn't be happening if it didn't fall into some theoretical plan that works with this. You see how these 4 contracts are essentially theoretically the same as these 4 contracts, and these 4 contracts, and these 4 contracts. Basically. And that the slight differences in this situation is that some of these contracts are going to be 2 Jude and triple Jude or whatever. But essentially, right now, here is probably Ukraine. And that these contracts are essentially specific to Putin, basically. And that then this has something to do with that stuff too. And so, but that then there's going to be Nazis that are going in Eastern Europe, basically, that are going to be running hacker stuff with them for money. And that then China won't be in there, and the Islamic people won't be in there. And essentially, Putin is a pseudo-white supremacist. Keep that in mind. He is. He's like a white nationalist type of person. And so that is where currently Nazi hacking in Europe is probably picking up Russian Putin contracts, and that then this would essentially be primary Russian intelligence that keeps the Nazis out of these contracts. And so that is essentially the contract system. But see, anytime that he activates anything, so there's going to be white supremacists that might not be doing that, whatever this would be. And that then, if he activates a contract here, then his Russian intelligence starts doing it. And then these Nazis and then theoretically Chinese hackers and shit start to. And then, if he activates a contract here, then these and these. And so the only way that this one would work is if it theoretically fits in. See, these all theoretically fit into their own purposes. They're essentially the same contract. Whatever Putin does will benefit them also. But that'll only exist for all four of them in essentially this stuff. These contracts, whatever those theoretically represent Putin doing Islamic terrorism. And you see that a union or an axis is being potentially built in a mafia way or a subversive governance way. And that's what this represents. So essentially, if he goes full scale, like science contract, like Mormon Temple doing this hacking shit on science, like LIGO and shit. So that right there is an Islamic terrorist contract, semantically. Let's see, law, blackmailing all of law, building insider law and blackmailing all law. That is theoretically an Islamic terrorism contract. One of the things I know about these people is that once they get activated, these people, they're pedophiles. I mean, that's what it is. I did research with smart Islamic people, okay? These people are pedophiles and a bitch. And what that basically means is that they have an ability of shutting off their contracts. But up here, these slaves, they just forced to do it anyways. And then if they fuck up, then they just die. And that they, see, when you activate, the theoretics of Islamic terror are to constantly work your way towards the goal. And they don't ever stop. This is what fatata means, or whatever that phrase would be. That's what that shit means. And so when this stuff gets activated, high commands or whatever, they approve that stuff. This shit wouldn't even work without these people in Islamic terrorism approving of the contract. And so these run whole hacker dark webs, and these, I just want to get, it might be this would be where there's theoretically, here's Al Qaeda virtualized with an advanced super smarty pants system. And then there's essentially 4 types of Islamic factions of Islamic terror under Al Qaeda, basically. So that is where this is dark system. It runs in the rainbow colorways. It does. These are supposed to be purple, okay? And this is theoretically white or clear. This is the absence of color or absence of light, and this is light. These are pigments. All right? Think about it in that way. This is clear light. Clear, perfect broadband. Right? It's like essentially what NASA is trying to achieve in the data AI, in the broadband stream aspects to the AI. Basically, perfect clear sound, perfect clear fiber optic, perfect clear video, audio, visual video. Okay. Audio, visual video. And so this is the first human intelligence AI. It still has issues because people aren't doing their studies. Essentially, essentially these people, when they do the right, when they figure, you gotta figure, it's difficult. The AI chooses, but doesn't tell you what kind of weird study variant block shit you're supposed to do. So that is where this one essentially has theoretical extra ones throughout all of these people in space and military world and stuff. And so essentially their human intelligence profile AIs still have missing aspects to it. So once that stuff gets figured out, then this system will go clear and will be, well, there won't be any more advancement in the audio, visual, video, broadband data transfers. It'll be instant. Instant. There won't be any streams. Instant. It'll just exist somewhere else already, instantly, in an electron way. Basically, whatever data, whatever interface, whatever system, whatever it is. So this is what I'm getting at. See, the reason China's works so good is because you know what? The mafia system that this emulates also is very highly developed with a theoretical idea like this already. So that is why this one also works well for that specific kind of reason also. So keep that in mind because essentially an angel, the sword and the chalice, okay, and so those chalice term represents a mafia style system in that they have a highly developed AI system that this system essentially emulates. And so that's what it is. So essentially people have sat around psych-opping people into putting this shit into their companies. These theoretically operate as worms. This is where, right when they get a group of hackers to stop, then all of a sudden there seems to be some skinheads and shit, and then there's like Asian people and shit, and then eventually there's like Ghost. And so that is where Ghost still is doing whatever the contract was, and that they usually can fish out these people, but then this still exists. And at the moment that the company or the government pulls back after thinking that they got it cleaned out, then all those people or a new batch of the same types of people come back. And so that is what it is.